All right, today we're assembling a base full door cabinet from Conestoga with an extended style left. It's just an option. We're going to get to it with this assembly in a second here, but not much to say about this cabinet. It's one of the simplest ones you can assemble. It is a little bit, you've got to be mindful when you're assembling it because there's no drawer up here. You have to be mindful of when you're assembling it, left or right hand extended style in this case. But it's a pretty straightforward assembly. It assembles like most of our other base cabinets. So let's get cracking on this base full door assembly. Thanks. All right, before we get cracking on this assembly for a base full door cabinet, I want to describe some things going on with your label. And this cabinet has some nuances that'll illustrate this really well. When you grab a box, you're going to look at this label, and the third line down says CUST, which is short for customer, CUST ID, CUST item ID. This one's number 16. That number correlates to the quote that you and your cabinet coach went through that you signed off on when you released your order. And it'll say self-note with the body of that cabinet on your quote. And that self-note is that number, self-note number 16. So I know this is cabinet number 16 from my drawing, if you had a drawing done from us. And it's also number 16 on the quote you went through. So you can read that full description. What I see on this cabinet is it's a base full door, but it has an extended style. Now, if you're really not paying attention, what direction would that style flip? How do I know if it's an extended style right or a left without going back to that line item on my quote? And you should be seeing that on your screen here. Without looking at the quote, I wouldn't know it's an extended style left. So you always want to look at the customer ID, run back to your quote paperwork, take a look at that and see if there's any finished ends, extended styles you have to be aware of, because that is going to affect your assembly. So now let's get rolling. Now that I've got my frame identified, this is an inset job, so my frame was not packed with my cabinet. The cabinet box has all the parts to build it except the frame. The frames came packed on the pallet with the cabinet doors and drawer fronts from the Pennsylvania plant. So you can see in the back wall there, I've laid out all the front frames for the job, and I just know that I'm doing cabinet 16. I run over and grab the right frame. So we're gonna get rolling on this assembly and show you how it's done. Okay, so we're all prepped to go here. Got my frame laying down. So the assembly is extended style left the way we want it. Cabinet comes with a cabinet back. That box I had has a cabinet back, the two top spreader strips, a toe kick plate, the cabinet bottom, and the two sides. So I have a complete box now in front of me. So here's where it deviates a little bit. If you are overlay, you may proceed directly to the part where I'm putting the panels in a little further on in the video. But if you're inset, you want to hang with me for a minute because we're going to show you something. First of all, I want to know what side the door is going to hinge on this cabinet. It's actually going to hinge on the right-hand side. What I need to do is, if you watched our Getting Started video series, we talk about breaking all your hardware up, putting the little hinge pieces in cups, that kind of thing. I've gone and gotten two hinge brackets for my inset hinges, one for the top, one for the bottom. I got my 4 fat head Phillips head screws. And now I'm going to grab this Bloom plate mate. You don't have to have this. We talk about this in some other videos. You don't have to have this, but it certainly is handy. You have to measure up 3 1/8 to find the center of this bracket. If you don't measure exactly 3 1/8 or close to it, there is some adjustability in the hinge. Your hinge won't clip on. This thing makes it a dream. 99 bucks from Lowe's, or not Lowe's, Amazon. You adjust it so that the screw to the center point is exactly 3 1/8. You can do that by, screwing the screw in or out. Once you have it, you clamp it onto the front frame. You grab the drill with a bit that they sent with the plate mate. And just like that, I have pre-drilled the hinge holes for the bracket. So I'm going to do top and bottom. And again, you can do this the old measurement way if you want. I just like this jig. You don't want to over drill. If you go too far and you don't have your drill collar set right, you'll blow right through the front of the front frame. It doesn't look pretty. So now we have this hinge bracket. There's a U-shape cutout. That's where the screws slide on. So the way I like to do this now is just get the screws started, because it's not a hole, it's a slot. So we're just going to get the screws started. Slide our plate on, and I'm going to hold it there with my thumb while I run it back home. You can hear the impact driver going there. I'm going to finish this top one up here, and then we'll come back and show the actual assembly. So now I've got my 2 hinge plates on, or brackets. I'm going to now take my glue bottle, and what we want to make sure is on the inside shoulder, there's 2 shoulders with a slot down the center. Those 2 shoulders are where the front edges of the plywood contact. So I want to make sure I've got good glue on those shoulders, primarily the inside one. And you'll notice on the outside one here, I kind of have to dodge the hinge brackets. You can't get your glue bottle in there nicely. The outer shoulder isn't as important because if you get too much there, it just wants to squeeze out on your work surface. A little bit of glue is better than too much. So we just make sure we have a good bead of glue on that inner shoulder. And then I put a bead of glue where my cabinet tops and bottoms are going to contact right there. I want to put some glue on the outer edge. If you go on the inner edge, again, it squeezes to the inside of the cabinet. We don't want that. So now it's as easy as finding my cabinet sides. With a base cabinet, you generally have a toe kick cut out unless it's got a flush toe. So I know where my top and bottom are. Again, this is an extended style left cabinet. So I have my frame oriented the way I want it to make it an extended style left. Whoops. Help if I get the cabinet panel the right way here. And we want to make sure we're lined up here and here as good as we can, where the front frame and the cabinet panel line up as good as they can. Now I grab my glue bottle. I'm just going to run a bead of glue halfway up that dovetail for the cabinet bottom, not the whole way. You go all the way to the bottom and you push your panel in, it's going to puddle at the bottom and create a mess. I grab my cabinet bottom. It's got a label on the finished surface. Feel a nice shiny surface, rough surface. You can always peel these labels off. I'll get to what these are all about in a minute. Peel them off as you go, or you can do them at the end. I have a spline going down, so I know this is down, this is in. I line up my dovetailed slots. And we simply push. Sometimes the pushing is harder than others. And what I want to make sure is I'm seated. At the bottom down here, I want to make sure I'm nice and tight to my front frame. Make sure my cabinet sides are in real good. And now I'm going to work to the front of the box. I have two spreader strips. Base cabinets get spreader strips unless you ask for a full lid. We do have a dust top option. But because base cabinets, you don't see the top, this is going to go down where that spline goes in. This one has no splines. That's your top one. So finish side in, spline down. We're just going to put a little dab of glue at the bottom here. Again, not a lot. We're just going to get a lot of gooey squeeze out. Now I'm going to line up my dovetails. And this is one where it's kind of like an alternating left-right tap until you get it going. And once you get 3/4 of the way down, it goes in a little better, but it wants to rock because the piece is so narrow. It's not hurting anything. You just got to kind of alternate it. This one we put in and just kind of let it sit here. We're going to push it up in a minute. Let's get a little bit of glue in here. Oh, and then we got to glue our cabinet top along these two shoulders and back here and across here. Now this is where the cabinet back is going to rest. Okay, we are glued up. I'm going to go back here and grab my cabinet top, or back rather. And I can see, something you got to be aware of, I can see back here where my cabinet side panel has kind of walked out of that groove. So every now and then, just make sure that thing's in there real good. Again, I'll peel this label off, but we'll get to these labels on the end of the assembly. I want to show you what they're all about. If this cabinet had drawers, you'd want to watch our base cabinet videos for that, but we would have already mounted the L-shaped bloom brackets. I'd want to make sure my back was oriented right so my brackets were correct to receive my drawer glides. This is a full door cabinet, so there are no drawer glides. Grab my pin gun, and I'm just going to start by putting a pin right in the dead center there. This just kind of holds things together for me. I'm going to come back and do a much more aggressive job of pinning this together. I'm going to tap this one up now. Remember, we left it kind of hanging down. Tap that one up, but if it fights you, you can put a pin right in the top of the cabinet just to hold the cabinet panel. And now you can tap up without it popping the back off. So now I'm going to put one in the center. I want to go about every 3 inches. I'll do my back one. Now I'm going to take my pencil, and you can see this is the center of that cabinet top, or I keep calling it top because it's up, but it's the back. And I'm just going to strike a line down the side of the cabinet. This is not a necessary step. This is just a step I like to do. But if you've got a good eye, you don't need to make a line, but it prevents you from blowing through the side of the cabinet on the inside. So I'm going to go right down this cabinet side, about every 3 to 4 inches. Do it on both sides. So now the back is held on this way. If it's a finished end, you got a nice painted surface or stained surface on there, you don't want to do the side pinning. You're only going to do this operation, and that is, get in the proper side here, take your pin gun and run the back of the gun right on the cabinet back. You don't want it straight up and down. You actually want the gun at an angle, and jam the nose of that gun right up into the corner, about every 3 or 4 inches. This is going to pin the back to the cabinet side at a toenail angle so it won't come through the inside of the cabinet. If you are using too long of a brad, or in this case a staple, it will blow through on these 1/2 inch sides. You only want to use no longer than 1 1/4 inches. Remember that. Grab my mallet. I'm going to do one more tap just to make sure everything is seated nice. And there is your base full door cabinet completed. Now I want to walk you through these labels I've been peeling off. Every panel has a label on it. It looks like this. These labels have the sales order number as well as all the information, the part size, the part type, whether it's a top or a bottom or a side. These labels are critical because if you have a damaged panel, the dovetail's mismachined or the panel's too long, too short, whatever, you break it. Doesn't matter. You're going to need a new piece. All you have to do is take a picture of that label and send it to your cabinet coach. This gives them all the information they need to get your replacement rushed out. So there you have it. That is the assembly of the base full door. Oh, I have one more step. I almost missed it. And this is an easy step to miss, and it's not a big deal. Conestoga's cabinets come with these toe kick plates, and it just goes in. You can see this. It goes in right here. It's a backer plate. And all this does is really gives you something to nail. Say you had a whole run of cabinets here, give you something to nail your final finished toe kick to. You don't have to have this in here because you still have the 1/2 inch cabinet sides coming down everywhere to nail your toe kick to. We find these can actually get in the way because if you're trying to run plumbing or stick a shim in the back of the cabinet to level it, as soon as you put this in, you've blocked off the back of the cabinet and you can't have access to it underneath here anymore. So we tend to leave these off a lot. If you do put them on, you might find you have to knock it out with a hammer. But I'm going to go ahead and put this on before we wrap up this assembly. But I don't have to show you that. It's pretty easy. Just put the thing in here and pin it 2 or 3 times through the cabinet side. Make sure it's level all the way across here. So that's your base full door assembly. And if you have any questions, as always, give your cabinet coach a call, 888-211-6482. And thanks for watching.